Well, it's another Wednesday with Riley Mullane and Chad Greenlee here on Spinnin' Strategy, where we mix business and music from the POV of a seasoned wedding DJ and an experienced business advisor or business manager, yours truly. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. My son is not. My son has the stomach flu, so he woke us up at about 5 o'clock in the morning, and it's been nonstop.
Always.
If you catch my drift,
That is that is always a fun sound to wake up to. It seems like we are in a season of sickness going around, and I'm gonna have to travel here next week, so hopefully I can stay away. So
yeah.
But how was the weekend? Were you on stage working over the weekend,
No,
or were you?
I wasn't. I kicked things off April 14th up in Minneapolis, actually, for a huge wedding. I think they're expecting like 400 people. So I'm actually renting some more speakers and just making sure I can provide them a wall of sound. But I'm really excited. The ballroom up in Minneapolis, it's the Marriott up there, I think on the southwest side of Minneapolis. And the acoustics there are absolutely phenomenal. And in ballrooms with carpet, and it's just like, yeah, so I'm excited. And then it's off to the races. So
And then the season begins, huh?
Yeah, so I watched some basketball and just prep music and do all the things that I do. How was your weekend? What were you up to?
You know, it was a weekend of kids back again, basketball, and kind of to outrun this crazy weather we've had since it was so nice. And now, today I'm back in the sweater closet, and I just can't decide what it's going to be. But we'll get through that. I'm not too worried.
We'll get there. We're kind of like mid-April, late April. We'll start seeing some consistent 60s and then our 70s. And
yeah,
we'll get there.
Well, you're going to be in Minneapolis next week. I'm going to be down in Georgia. And I was prepping for this keynote that I got to give on cybersecurity, of all things. I thought some great topics for you and me to jam on.
Yeah.
I was going back to 1999 as I was researching kind of the history of security and IT. And I don't know if you remember, like in 1999, New Year's Eve, the government had pumped about $100 million into this unknown bug, trying to figure out what's going to happen when the computers go from 99 to 00, and if our complete infrastructure was just going to collapse.
Yep.
You remember what that was?
I do. Yeah, absolutely. I was at a friend. I remember New Year's Eve very well, actually. I was at a friend's house with a bunch of other people, and we were playing Prince, 1999. I remember that. And then it turned to Will Smith. Was it like Will 2K? Remember that song? Will 2K, I believe, or like something Millennium. Yep. I don't know. There was just a million plays on words, Millennium and Will and whatever. So it was a great time for Will Smith. But and then nothing really happened, right? I mean,
nothing happened. Absolutely. I mean, I think a few things happened, but I was actually, oddly enough, in a small bank branch in the bathroom with antifreeze in one hand, making sure the toilets didn't bust. Like, that's the level of technology. So as I was prepping and kind of going through like the history of that and thinking about those were our problems in 1999. And then I started thinking, as I was kind of perusing, how am I going to, make the migration from 99 to 2024 is, you think about 2001 as kind of a pivotal moment in music. And it was a pivotal moment, I think, just in IT in general, because you had two things really going on. You had Napster, and then you had iTunes. And so I wanted to hit upon that because I know you've got a lot to say about that. I wanted to, also in our strategy session, so, kind of look back at music and how that's changed. And then in our strategy session, I really want to talk about thought leadership. That's just a hot topic.
Yeah.
And no one can seem to really nail down like what that means. It's just kind of floating out there.
Sure.
And then I gave you a homework assignment. It's probably time to talk a little bit about my history and self.
Yeah.
And then again, end with the week's obsessions. So any topics that are pressing on your mind?
Yeah. I always love talking about the evolution of things, whether it's technology or society or just the things that have changed from the early 2000s up until now. It's for whatever reason, nostalgia is something that I'm really drawn to. Like a lot of the Instagram accounts I follow are like 1990s and 2000s nostalgia accounts. And it's, I was thinking about Westdale Mall here in Cedar Rapids and just going, because you never take those experiences. Actually, it's the opposite of what I'm trying to say. You tend to take those experiences for granted when you're walking into Westdale Mall, for just an example. And you never think to yourself at that time that it's not future proof, right? Like this will always be. Now we got Coral Ridge, and there's still malls around the country, but not very many. And some of my best memories were like with my mom walking through there. We'd go to Bon Mar and Montgomery Ward and J.C. Penney's and all these places. So just how things change, but then also looking back on those times, I'm sure it's the same with you, Chad. Like you get that feeling, right? That nostalgia kind of bone, just kind of, you can feel it kind of radiate within you.
100%. And when you dig into old things like in your basement, you start looking back and you're like, oh, you don't, but you tend to only think about the good things. From a nostalgic perspective, you don't forget, like you still kind of had the same problems existed. They're just maybe a little bit different,
for sure.
So, but if you think about, so you had Napster, right? And Napster, they had like the shortest, like most impactful run, 1999 to like 2001. I mean, that was where, if there wasn't one of us, I don't think, around that time that we were in high school or college that illegally or wrongfully had access to music, right? You just like, what is this, right? And I have access to it. And then then they got in a bunch of trouble, right? Lars from Metallica obviously had a big play in that.
You sure did.
And shut it down pretty quickly. But then all of a sudden you flip around and you see a guy by the name of Steve Jobs at Apple announce iTunes. And he hadn't even announced the iPod yet. He just said, hey, all of a sudden you want access. And I think at the time it was 200,000 songs. You want access to them, right? Yeah. Now I look, they last year or 2 years ago, they hit 100 million songs. So we went in like 21, 22 years from 200,000 songs to 100 million songs. The access of just pushing a button.
That's hard to comprehend, actually. Really, like when you stop and think about it, it's really hard to comprehend how much music is out there and how much music comes out every day. I heard a stat. I don't know if this is accurate, but I want to say it's like 80,000 new songs are uploaded every day. I'm sure that stat's somewhere around there, but it's insane. It's insane how many new songs are being uploaded. Not all are good, but
and not all should be uploaded, right? But well, you take like Olivia Rodrigo as an example. If iTunes and TikTok and those things like don't pave the path, you don't get noticed for like driver's license. And now you have like the singer Jax, who kind of changes everything with Victoria's Secret, and now it's got a new song coming out, I think called like I Choose Violence or something like that. There's just a lot of it. What it did is it did disrupt, right? But it gave more access. And I think that's the difference that you look back at and you see is disruption changes, but does it also gives more access and availability.
It kind of opens up things. It does. Now, because I'm a DJ and because I rely on music so heavily with what I do, it is so crazy to think about the rate in which people get tired of songs. Like there's just, because it used to be you had a song that would work all like wedding season long or like all year, maybe 2 years, and you would get the same response every single time. And now I noticed it with like Lizzo, like Truth Hurts and Good as Hell, and like those songs, you had like 6 months that those worked, and then you started to play them and you're expecting this response, and people are like, nah, we hear that on Instagram Reels, we see that on TikTok. Like they hear the same song over and over. So it's really hard to find new music, that's a big thing in the DJ industry right now, and there's a lot of people talking about it, that it's like they're for whatever reason, these record companies, they're not producing, whether it's they're not allowing artists to produce it, or it's a societal thing. They don't want us to dance and be happy. I don't know, but that's a conspiracy theory in itself, which I could go deep on that topic. But it's crazy because so many of these new songs you can't dance to them. So it's like I Olivia Rodrigo and stuff, maybe with some remixes, but I can appreciate the song and the song structure and the chord progressions and stuff. But it's like, I probably listen to music way differently than you do, right? Like I listen to it as a DJ. Well, my instinct is like, yeah, but will it work at a wedding, or will it work at an event? You know?
Yeah, and I listen to it as like, how many covers can I find, and can I sing it really loud in my car?
Yeah.
That's exactly how I view it.
Yeah.
And well, I mean, there isn't, like you say, a lot of new music, but and if you do release music and Kelly Clarkson gets to sing it, watch out, because it may sound better, right?
100%.
I mean, that's what's interesting.
Yeah, and these songs that are taking on kind of a new life, right? Like they've become kind of revitalized and brought back from the dead, right? Because of TikTok and movies and again, just pop culture. I was talking with the DJ. I think there have you heard the song "Murder on a Dance Floor"?
Yeah,
it's a great song.
Yep.
That song's from 2001. So they, and I was talking with the DJ. I'm like, that's like a UK pop song from like 2001. He's like, no, I'm like, look it up. And so it's just, it's crazy how some of these songs just find themselves integrated in technology because of the evolution of technology, right?
Correct. Yeah. And, I mean, now, you see like TikTok, and music was pulled, and you see a lot of empty videos with music. So that it also creates that other side where you're so reliant on the access and availability. And you're just like, well, this should just be available.
Yeah.
What do you mean I can't listen to it?
Yeah.
Who has rights? What, those sorts of things. And that all really changed, I think. Because of iTunes, because now you could go from having to, you had to purchase physical media, and once in a while, towards the end there, you could get something sent to you, but it was physical media. I mean, we remember the, what was it? The Columbia Records or whatever it was, like the subscription.
Columbia House, I think. Yeah.
Columbia House. Thank you. Yeah. Yep. Columbia House. Where you hear that, you that's nostalgia right there.
Yeah, that business model wasn't very well thought out.
But could you imagine nowadays, on top of all the gear that you have to bring in, you would also have to physically carry in all your records?
Yeah, man, that was a real thing. That was a real thing. It was when I started DJing, we were on the tail end of that era. Okay. But I remember absolutely using CDs, and I was using these Denon dual CD players where I could still loop them. And what's so funny is, like, you loop it and it wouldn't be a seamless loop, right? So it wouldn't be like boom, 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 repeat, boom. It would be boom, 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 boom. It was like really hard to like mix. And now, I mean, what's crazy, Chad, is you can create studio quality, like masterful engineering final product of a song in your bedroom for $500. Like, by the time you get a MIDI controller and plugins, they call it like a DAW, a digital audio workstation, you can create something that sounds like it was mixed on a $100,000 board for $500. And people are doing it. People are doing it. It's wild.
People, I mean, look at my kid, has basically made an entire YouTube channel with a couple 100,000 followers from his phone, and they're only music edits. That's all it is. Repurposing existing music, and people head over heels for it.
Yeah, that's an art form. That is an
started doing it when he was 14. I mean,
yeah, what the heck? Such an art form, man. It is. It's great. Like remixers, producers, those that are doing their own edits. People don't understand, like, to do that well, how hard that is. Like, to do it very tastefully, because there is so, like, in the DJ record pools that I subscribe to, there's so much junk out there that just didn't get mixed and mastered the right way, and you can never use them. And that's the thing. It probably took that individual a long time to make this remix, and they will never get used because the vocals are buried and bass lines too high, too close, sonically. So yeah, somebody that can do it right, it's like, oh yeah, you know what you're
Yeah, and I think you've got the ear for it, but I do think if you matched it, it's like fine wine, right? When you taste a good one compared to a bad one, now you know. But if you've never compared the two, you tend to be like, okay, it's all music, right?
Yeah,
But
right,
you kind of
right.
got to acquire that taste for
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
But I think from the business side, to kind of wrap up like the evolution of iTunes, like we don't even call it iTunes now; it's just Apple Music. It's
right.
just a library, and you've got Spotify. Who else am I missing? I mean,
Tidal. I subscribe to Tidal.
okay,
For let's
YouTube
say,
Music,
yeah, YouTube
right?
Music, Amazon Music.
Mm-hmm.
There's a ton of music streaming platforms, and Spotify. They've started to integrate AI into their playlist curation. So
And
you can
what's that mean?
so there's a setting like a DJ setting, which it's not worthy, but it'll get very close. So technically, based on your listening habits, and the more you listen, the better the AI is going to get. Just like any prompts you put into like ChatGPT and stuff, it gets better based on your behavior and your thought patterns of what you want it to do. And so, if I'm a big fan of like Celine Dion and this person and that person and this person, then the AI is going to say, okay, well, based on your music path, would you like us to make you a curated playlist in real time that will like auto mix? Like, yeah, let's do it. And I would say it's 40% there, maybe. But it's allowed me to, just listening around the house, it's allowed me to hear some things. And I'm like, I forgot all about that. Like, that was an album track that never made it. Like, especially in the 80s. Like, again, the Malayan households were 80s music all day, all day. And so it's fun to dive deep with my kids and to have them like listen to these songs that not very many people know, but they are just incredible. So that's where AI can really work to your advantage. And all these
Yeah.
DJs are freaking out, like, will we be replaced? I don't know. I think they've got a long way to go, but the technology as a DJ, it's never been, I don't want to say it's never been an easier time to get into DJing, and I'm sure it's similar with other industries, but it's a lot easier now than it was way easier now, and cheaper, by the way, than it was 10
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point, and we'll kind of transition into our strategy session here. This might be a kind of a good segue to it, but I think a lot of people are worried about AI and replacement, but we had tractors that replaced 100-person farms. It's not replacing people. It's going to make more productive. So what took 3 people or 40 hours is going to be reduced to 10 hours. You can work 3 to 5 times faster. And right now the observation is it's probably only 70 to 80% accurate.
Yeah.
But I gave a talk on this about a month ago to a group of owners, and I said, imagine you're running a marathon and you're next to somebody who has a bike and you're in the same marathon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But that bike breaks down 80% through the marathon and they have to run the rest of the way. Who do you think is going to finish first?
right.
And they're like, well, the person that had the bike, they're going to have a head start. And I said, that's AI right now. It's going to give you a head start, and you're probably going to have to edit and manually read the last few, but you're going to get there faster and
That's
more
a
productive.
great way to look at it. Actually, to me, that's like the perfect way to look at it, because it's not perfect. Like the things that I've used, but it gets you over the hill or over the hump of maybe this mental block of like, where do I want to go with this caption? Where do I want to go with this description? And I've had it absolutely inspire me to go other areas and direction creatively, for sure.
Well, and think about just like the proofreading. So I think I'll mention this. Kind of I've been typing and writing a ton over the past couple weeks, and when you need kind of like a really good edit or something, you can plug some of that in and be like, just act as my Forbes editor, and it comes back and it doesn't change anything. It just corrects everything. It's just like a Grammarly as well, but when you use it for good, not evil, right? As an example, it's the people that that embrace and grasp AI and understand it. are going to be able to do the work of 2 or 3 people very fast.
Yeah.
When businesses catch on to that, they're going to accelerate and move faster. And I think that's just the nature of how we all do things.
I agree. Now, let me ask your opinion on this. Do you think there are some businesses holding back from using AI not to upset their employees and freak them out? Like, it started, we're gone, we're going from 75 employees to 30. The boss gave us the green light to use AI. Like, this is our own demise.
Well, or I mean, the flip side, I think the better side is, how do we take our existing 75 employees and act like we have 250?
Right.
Right? How do we act as if with our 70 we can do the power of 250?
Yeah.
To me, that's the way you should be thinking, is not how do I reduce my costs, is how do I accelerate and grow my business? As a DJ, how do I work more weddings half the time? How do I compile playlists in half the time, and I can do more work with less effort? That, if you think that way, AI is a great tool that just speeds you up, makes you more productive, and you'll have more energy.
Yeah,
potentially.
I agree. And to not be scared of it, right? And there's going to be corruption in everything, but where I'm looking at this in the most, I don't know, kind of an excited way or positive way, is what will hopefully happen in the medical field. Being able to diagnose things like cancer precursors, Alzheimer's, dementia, like things like that you can get ahead of it, versus where the technology is at now, where, and I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but NVIDIA, which is like a graphics card company that had put a ton of money in AI. They were talking about like things that we're used to right now as far as ailments go, they will be gone. Like, we will be able to, he was saying that we think of biology as scientific, but now it's how did he say it? Like, biology will be technological now, where it's like we can diagnose the X's and O's that are found in technology and integrate that into biology. It's a great, he had a great kind of keynote on that. I watched like 15 minutes of it and I'm like,
yeah, I think, access to education, knowledge, all those sorts of things is going to be on just a 10, 100x times what we see now. And it's been a rocket pace already. That kind of leads me into kind of a strategy session I wanted to jam with you on, was this whole idea of like thought leadership. We are kind of an educational based selling model, what we do. So we try and, every interaction that we have with a business or an owner, we try and bring something that we're seeing kind of across, the entire industry in which we serve, as an example.
Yeah.
But thought leadership's been thrown around for a while, and I think a lot of people either embrace that or they completely shut it off and think like the old school way of cold calling, you just got to work harder, and those sorts of things still works. And I think the research is starting to come out that that you've got to be warmer, you've got to be more magnetic. And I even heard this concept this morning of, what is kind of your binge bin. So if somebody wanted to consume all of Riley Mullane, what's the binge bin? Where can they go and just binge all of that?
Yeah.
And if you're creating this binge bin for you, so I'll stop there. What is like thought leadership? When I say that, what does that mean? What does that mean to you?
I can't help but kind of laugh a little bit, because, my business partner, Megan, and I, we grew a pretty large team in a short amount of time, and we've refined it. And, some of the employees moved away or, gone on to do other things. The wedding industry is a really tough industry to be in, because you're sacrificing so much on weekends and family time, parties and stuff like that. So we're at a really good place with our team right now. But for me, it's like, I have always been very, very transparent with my thoughts and my philosophy and belief system when it comes to everybody that is a part of the organization, because I want them to know that I don't have everything figured out. I have very little figured out, but I want to figure it out together. And I remember hearing an interview with an individual talking about Steve Jobs, and Steve Jobs would have all of these open door meetings, and he would invite any department that wanted to be involved to be in on these meetings. If it was a creative meeting or a marketing meeting or a sales meeting or whatever, he wanted everybody involved so there could be other individuals to give their thoughts and opinions. And I've always loved that. And we've had to pivot a lot in our business and the things that we're doing now. But I've always been one to be pretty vocal about what we're trying to do, and I want to get people excited to be a part of that journey. And um, I'm always really careful with even like little things about how I phrase uh, like my role with Ann and Ellis. Like, you work with us, you don't work for us. Like, you work with us. We are a team, and I don't like to be called a boss or like things like that. Just kind of weird me out because I'm not that guy. Like, I don't want to tell you what to do. I want to do it together. Um, and so I, there's just a million ways that you could navigate leadership and what you want your culture and what you want your team to look like. And for me, I'm always maybe a little more ambitious than I am intelligent. So I gotta lead with
When I think
my
of
heart.
like thought leadership and in observing you and what you're trying to do, right? You kind of go through these evolutions of, you kind of identify yourself with what you're doing as what you're currently doing. And I think more so the switch has come to identify yourself, and then you so happen to do this.
Right.
And I think of the great examples. Like, you think of, example, you think of Peter Maluk, CEO of creative planning. Like, you think of Peter Maluk and then creative planning, and I think when I think of Riley Mullane, I don't think of Ann and Ellis. I think of you, and then you've developed Ann and Ellis, right? Good friend Kyle Steele, right?
Yeah.
We think of Kyle Steele, we don't think of what he does, but we all know, and he'll say it, I think, on his 27th episode of 1 Minute Wednesday, people were repeating Kyle Steele, SEO expert, 1 Minute Wednesday, right? Yeah. So, and I think to get to that point takes time and intentionality as to separating yourself from what it is that you actually do to who it is you actually are.
And it kind of takes some courage and vulnerability too. It takes a lot of courage.
I know marketing is always on me. They're like, come on, Chad, like, don't be so corporate. Like, nobody, people want to see your dogs, and when we're doing podcast here, like, I could have 3 of my coworkers. I think one of my best posts lately in LinkedIn was, I just kind of showed what's behind the blur.
Sure.
On LinkedIn. And I had my 3 coworkers back here just snoring and sleeping, and but I think that authenticity, like you say, and I think you mentioned too, like, sometimes you get wrapped up in doing it for views versus brand, right? And that's becoming very, very, I would say, frowned upon, right? People can see through that pretty quickly.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I would recommend anybody that is just getting started, getting in front of a camera, to post and ghost and worry about like the interactions and stuff later. But like,
don't look at it.
Just don't even look at it, because you are going to find something that maybe you said incorrectly. I do that all the time, by the way. Like, I'm not this,
Well, I said your name wrong for like 3 episodes.
Well, but that's more on me for not correct. Like, a lot of times, like, momentum is just going in the right direction. Like, whatever. It just doesn't matter to me. But you're going to find a million imperfections. And to me, you have to embrace the beauty of that. And if it makes you feel better to just post and ghost and not look at it, then do that at least. But to get it out there, I have those conversations all the time with vendors on our team that are incredible human beings, incredible business model, doing everything right, but all they're posting is like product photos. And there comes a point in time where, as a consumer, I know what you do, but I want to know why you do what you do. And I'm sorry, but there's no better person to explain the why of your business than the person that started the business.
Who I am fascinated with right now, from a thought leader perspective, and I don't agree with really the guy. I've kind of been tuned off, but now he adopted a dog, Dave Portnoy, Barstool
Oh
Sports.
yeah, of course. El
And
Presidente.
he adopted this pit bull named Miss Peaches.
Yep. Yep.
And I follow Miss Peaches. I think half the world follows Miss Peaches. And there's something refreshing about seeing the way that he's taken in this rescue dog and this different side of a personality of him, because you're used to kind of this gruff Boston, just in your face, very non-PC, can
Reviewing
rub people the
pizzas.
wrong way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and now you see this dog that is donating significant amounts of money to shelters, and that's near and dear to my heart. I mean, you got the Greenlee Zoo over here, but
Yeah.
is there someone that you think's kind of doing it well in a unique way?
You mentioned Kyle Steele. Listen, Kyle is a guy that he's not a character. Like I don't do well with characters. I don't do well with somebody that is almost auditioning for an acting role. You know what I'm saying? Like Kyle is Kyle, and Kyle's the same guy when the camera's off and when the camera's record. Like that's what I love. And so he's a guy that inspires me all the time. And he just you turn a camera on, there's nobody better, at least in like my circle of people that I love and respect, that can just deliver, can just deliver. I was listening to an interview with I think Steve Lukather. He's the lead guitarist of Toto. Incredible guitarist, the most humble dude. But he did like Beat It. He didn't do the guitar solo. That was Eddie Van Halen. But he did that guy. And it was so humble about, like, Michael sang it to me and I just did it. And he's like, I'm good for it. But he talks about getting in the world of music. A lot of these musicians get red light fever. They can be in their bedroom just shredding, right? Doing all these really cool things. They go in the studio, the light turns red to record, and they're like, I don't know what to do. I don't have any confidence in myself. Kyle's the opposite of that. Turn the light on, don't turn the light on. This is what you're getting. Like, let's go, bring it. So I mean, I'm saying Kyle Steele, my man.
I like it. Yeah. I like it. Well, last week, behind the booth, we got to know you a little bit. And I said maybe we turn the tables this week and get to know me a little bit. And I gave you a little bit of homework assignment. So I'm going to turn it over to you as the host with the most.
One of my favorite questions to ask when I interview other people or just have a conversation with somebody else is to ask kind of a loaded question, because it can go a million different ways. But like, when you think of Chad Greenlee, what are some things that come to mind? Like, whether it's current day Chad Greenlee, 18-year-old Chad Greenlee, like what are some things that come to mind in regards to your identity and what your why, your purpose, what made you who you are?
The first thing, like when you say that, and I'll just come right off, is like, I'm friendly to everyone, but have a very tight circle.
Yeah.
And I've always done that for no rhyme or reason. But I think if you ask a variety of people that are close to me, they may give you a couple different answers. But always prepared, I think, almost in a maybe in a way that has come easier over time, but it used to be a paralysis of mine. So much to the fact that I wouldn't show up to things when I was performing quite a bit, because I just didn't feel like I had enough reps in, or you'd show up and you'd feel like larger than impaired and you just knew it was a bad day. And now that's changed a bit, because I think of confidence, and I think of as a way of, for example, playing golf. I play golf maybe once a week now in a league, and I play some of the best golf I've ever played, because I've hit thousands and thousands and thousands of golf balls, and it's not going to get any better for me, but it's not going to get worse. So you just show up and well, I have done this before. My body's not going to forget what I've done unless I'm hurt. Go out and just play and enjoy it. And I think a lot of the things that I've learned too is happiness is supposed to be part of the process. You're supposed to enjoy the yeah. So
let me speak for you here for a second, because I think first impressions are everything. And I remember Um, I tend to remember the feeling somebody gives me when I meet them for the first time. And we met through some mutual friends, and our friendship took off from there. And there's just a beautiful, natural way of things. And here we are, which is
Yeah.
cool. What a blessing. This is awesome. To me, the word that comes to mind meeting you are very intentional, very, very intentional. And I think that comes across in just the way you speak. When we met up and had kind of like those masterminds and whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
they were conversational, but you led it, right? And you always kind of, and you kind of like what you're doing on this podcast, because I think it just so comes like it comes so naturally to you. It doesn't really come naturally to me. Like you always kind of bring it back. You always kind of bring it back, and I see that with greatness. You know, you look at Caitlin Clark. She can go to the media, do a commercial for Gatorade and Hy-Vee, but she
Still gonna play
performs.
some ball.
She performs, right? Will she have an
Right.
off night? Yeah, but her off night is still some of these D1 players like best nights, right? So let's not get that twisted. True. She comes back to her intention. Her intention is to win the game, you know, be there for her teammates. And that's what I have always seen in you. And you're always so prepared. But I think being prepared it goes back to being intentional. So yeah, and that's something that I'm really drawn to, because again, I equate individuals that are intentional with individuals that are great, and they're on their path to becoming even greater. So
yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And sometimes that intentionality, what people don't see is sometimes you feel like you set the bar pretty high early on. You've always got to outperform it, and that can become exhausting at some point. But when you can figure out the way to make the balance, that's the trick when you're classified. And I appreciate you saying that as an intentional person, is you got to find that balance so you don't burn out, which is always that challenge, because you can be like, you can go over the top 150% when 80% is better than anything else.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
that's kind of the trick.
Well, and I think you have to be careful because there's a fine line. And I use the example. I used to produce a lot of music with a good friend of mine, Kenny, who's down in Atlanta now, and another good friend of mine who's in Nashville, still very much involved in music and doing their thing. Kenny was the leader of the studio, very intentional. He was very intense. And sometimes I'd be nervous to crack a joke, because it's like, I don't want to take away from what we've got going on, but like, we are producing music and what we're coming up with is pretty awesome. So like, you know, let's just vibe a little bit. And he's like, no, we got to put the drums down. We got to do this. And it's like, okay, I'll get in where I fit in. Do you find yourself, because again, your journey, which I want to kind of talk from the beginning too, just like what got you into sales in your first sales role, but like, have you ever found yourself with the self-awareness that you have, like, I might be coming across a little intense right now?
Oh, 100%. And sometimes I don't see it, and others need to kind of remind me of it. And I've done a good job, specifically in sales, of letting people know, hey, when we get in this situation, this is not my strong suit. I need you to open the door. I need you to kind of, kind of break the ice, so to speak, because I like to kind of just go in. We've got a purpose. I'm respectful of your time. Let's move forward, and let me help you. And you got to be able to kind of balance that. And I haven't always been great at it, but I've been better at identifying necessarily that, hey, this is not necessarily what comes natural to me. So if I'm with someone and we're working together, I just kind of say, hey, just so you know, I need your help here, and I got you. If we're at a networking event and a party, like if we walk into a room of 1,000 people, not where I shine, room of like 10 people, awesome, all day long.
Right.
But I'll be like, hey, if we're going to work a room, I need your help working the room, right? I need some help introduction. So
and
that
there's
just
some vulnerability there that allows you to at least be true to yourself and true to others around you, that you're all kind of seeking this common goal of accomplishing whatever it is. What was your very first sales role?
Oh, very first sales role. Very first, well, I guess sales role where I made commission, we'll say, I was a recruiter for compliance and auditors for banks. Sarbanes-Oxley had just happened, and I got into this small recruiting firm, and I had no idea what I was doing, and I wasn't great at it, but I was good enough. I at least put in the effort, but I wasn't skilled enough. I think I was 24 at the time. So yeah, I got introduced into recruiting and kind of dialing for dollars and what it meant to make 70 calls a day, what it meant to get rejected, like 69 of those. And like the 70th one was a loose, like, hey, yeah, I'll talk to you for like 3 minutes, but just send me your stuff and goodbye. That was my very first sales role.
What have you learned? I guess, what would you tell Chad in his first sales role, knowing what you know now?
I would have told him, now I've learned that if somebody has a process and it's been proven, to not try and buck it early on, because you always think that there's an easier, better way.
Mhm.
And I think early on I was like, you don't have to do it that way. I can do it my way. And I always think of like the scene from Days of Thunder where you got Cole Trickle and you've got Harry and they're going around the track and he says, give me 100 laps on your way and give me 100 laps on mine. And I guarantee you I'll be faster. And I think too often early you're trying to think like, that sounds really ridiculous to have to go through it that way and do that process. But I think the reps, what people learn, and I'll tell you what I heard this morning, the reps is the process of learning that you have to go through. It's not necessarily the process that itself is going to win. And I heard somebody say Mr. Beast, #1 YouTuber, right? He always gives this advice. People ask him, they're like, hey, I want to be like you. You have great videos. How do you get your topics? And Mr. Beast says, well, why don't you go produce 100 videos and come to me on the 101st video?
Yeah.
And he says, two things are going to happen. One, most people won't do it. And two, the people that actually do it don't need to come back to him because they've got it all figured out.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So
I love that. Welcome to my world of training DJs. So I guess, cutting to today, what are some things that you're doing to not just like better enhance your sales process or whatever, but things that are bringing you like true fulfillment, both personally and professionally?
yeah, I think one, I've been saying this a lot, is writing has produced more clarity in all of my thought. If you don't hear me communicating succinctly, I've got to give an intro, 5-minute intro to this keynote next week. And then I just got asked to come speak to 600 college athletes on my experience in college athletics on a Monday night. And I'm like, okay, we'll figure that one out. But this intro, and I always think of, storytelling. And I've been a lot in my career of kind of X's and O's instead of storytelling and adapting to where you are. I'm really trying to pay attention and be deliberate on setting the stage and let the stage mature. And I think if you hear, if like you hear really good joke tellers and comedians, they can set a stage or an instance pretty fast,
right?
And almost too fast. And some people might say like, they get to the scene or the framework very fast. And sometimes I think I get there way too fast. I'm like, we're here, we got to do it, instead of building. And it's almost like I respect others' time too much in a way where you think like, I'm here for a reason, educate me. Entertain me, educate me, or give me some knowledge, right? One of those two things. So those are some things that I'm really trying to work on right now. And I'm trying to be really patient in the process of building out kind of this business, because when you've been in kind of sales and been successful in one way, shape, or form, you get impatient. I think the more experience you have, when you have all the tool sets, but still the process to get there is the same. You've got to take the time. You've got to be intentionally patient. But when you've done it before and all those sorts of things, like, it gets really hard to do.
There is such a, I'll say art form again, to owning the room, where you don't match the energy in the room, you are the energy, and you get the audience to match you. And I have to do that a lot in the world of weddings because a lot of what I'm doing is subjective, right? Whether it's playing a song that might be somebody's favorite song or it might be their least favorite song. It's like, regardless, you have to read things in real time and,
Yeah.
you know, which makes both of our quote jobs a lot of fun because you never know what you're going to get. You never know what you're going to get.
Never, ever know what you're going to get. Yeah, well, thanks for turning the tables on me a little bit. Hopefully I answered your questions to the best of my ability, unprepped, unrehearsed.
We're going to keep diving into Chad Greenlee. We just scratched the surface, people.
So we end, as we always end, with the week's obsessions, or what's been fascinating you. What has been your obsession that you've been diving down these rabbit holes this last week?
Well, it is a YouTube channel created by Martin Miller.
Martin Miller.
He is a German-born guitar player. I believe he spent some time in the U.S., moved back to Germany, speaks fluent English, sings fluent English. The covers that he does, his band, they call it like the session band, keyboardist, bass player, rhythm guitar, drum. I mean, the drummer in their band is one of the best drummers I've ever seen or heard in my life. They do 80s medleys, 90s medleys. They do several of those medleys. They'll do covers of just these random songs that are just done so well. And the reason why I'm fascinated and obsessed a little bit with the things that he does, he doesn't use any shortcuts. The editing, the production, the lighting, the camaraderie that this band has. I mean, they've been hustling, for I think 12 or 13 years, and they're at a point now where they're getting a ton of views and a ton of, I think he's almost at, 813,000 subscribers, which is great and all, but it's like, I just love the undeniability of what these individuals are doing, and you can tell they're having fun in the process. So I can't stop watching videos that he's doing and listening to the covers while I'm working and editing. So shout out to him, man. He's
Martin Miller. I have to look that up. So
incredible. How about you, Chad?
I think I've said I have been on this kick about writing 2,000 to 3,000 words a day on what, you might ask. I'm working on a little hobby project, and it's the more that you kind of write, the more you write. And it's weird. And a lot of people would be like, well, I've got nothing to write about. And I think the first step is, well, first you've just got to start writing.
Right.
And then you find more things to write about. And I'm helping someone kind of kickstart a course that they want to kind of monetize. And they just ask if I could compile thoughts. And the more I got into it, it's like, well, we've actually kind of got a book in a way. So I'm waking up at like 4:30 in the morning. I'm writing for a couple hours. And then at night, I kind of flip it open and I'm like, where did I end? And the whole first kind of what started me down this was kind of prepping the page and really not looking at a blank page. And as I started the outline, it's amazing how fast and how much you can type and write. And then when you kind of go back and start the editing process, well, you kind of look at it, you're like, well, did I write drunk and edit sober?
I was just gonna say that. Was that Hunter S. Thompson, I think, that said that?
But the answer is no. Write sober, edit sober. That's been a couple weeks, and it's starting to just manifest and keep going. So I'm kind of going down this rabbit hole, and it's a lot of fun to see, just the amount of production out of that, and it's a lot of fun.
I'll be the first to admit that sounds like a much more productive fascination than me watching covers of songs on YouTube. But
oh, I didn't say that I can do it in like a short amount of time. Don't get me wrong. Like, I do have a level of ADHD that is like 30 minutes here and then 30 minutes of like messing around. So I might be finding some YouTube channel to go down to. So
yeah, well. That's cool.
Well, hey,
man. That's cool.
Yeah, that was great jamming this week.
Yeah, it was.
A lot of fun on this week's episode of Spin & Strategy. We will see you in a week or so. I'm Chad Greenlee.
I'm Riley Mullane.
All right, we'll see you all next week.
Thanks, guys.